Let's run a thought experiment. Picture the combined R&D budget of Pfizer, Moderna, and Roche. We are talking billions of dollars, legions of PhDs, and massive server farms running protein-folding algorithms, all chasing the holy grail of virology, a universal prophylactic agent that stops respiratory viruses at the front door. We want something that prevents the flu, coronaviruses, and the common cold from setting up shop in your throat. Now, what if I told you that the biological machinery required to synthesize a potent, broad-spectrum antiviral agent already exists inside your own epithelial cells? And what if I told you that the only raw material this machinery is missing, the rate-limiting step in your own innate immunity, is arguably the cheapest commodity on planet Earth? I'm talking about sodium chloride, salt. Welcome to Dr. Evolution's Toolbox, where I share tools people are using to build a better world with biology. The ideas, thoughts, and topics discussed here are my own and do not reflect the views held by my employer. Today, we are not discussing the latest monoclonal antibody or a CRISPR gene editing target. We are deconstructing a practice that has been dismissed for decades as an old wives' tale, relegated to the dusty shelves of folklore alongside chicken soup and wool socks. We are conducting a forensic audit of the science behind saltwater gargling. But we aren't looking at this through the lens of home remedies. We are looking at it through the lens of mucosal immunology and fluid dynamics. We are going to explore how a simple saline solution might just be the most undervalued tool we have in the fight against upper respiratory tract infections, and by extension, the looming crisis of antimicrobial resistance. To understand why this matters, we have to look at the landscape of modern medicine. We are currently fighting a war on two fronts. First, we have the post-pandemic reality, where we are hyper-aware of viral entry points. We know now more than ever that the nasopharynx and the oropharynx, the back of the throat and the nose, are the beachheads. That is where the invasion starts. If you lose the battle there, you are fighting a systemic war. The second front is perhaps more terrifying: antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. Every day, clinicians are bombarded by patients with viral sore throats demanding antibiotics. We know antibiotics don't kill viruses, but the pressure to do something is immense. This overprescription is breeding superbugs. We desperately need a non-pharmaceutical intervention, an NPI, that actually works, something that empowers the patient and reduces the viral load without destroying the microbiome or fueling resistance. This brings us to the central hypothesis we are dissecting today. The prevailing literature suggests that regular gargling with saline doesn't just soothe a sore throat, it may actually prevent the infection from taking hold in the first place. We are seeing data suggesting a reduction in incidence of nearly 30 to 36%. In the world of epidemiology, a 36% reduction in infection rates from a practically free intervention is a staggering signal. So let's peel back the layers. How does this actually work? Because if you think it's just washing away the bugs, you are only scratching the surface. The first mechanism is indeed mechanical, but it's more nuanced than just rinsing a dirty dish. We call this mechanical lavage. When you gargle, particularly if you are doing it correctly, aerating the fluid at the back of the throat, engaging the lymphoid tissue of Waldear's ring, you are creating shear stress. You are physically dislodging viral particles, and crucially, necrotic cells. You are stripping away the debris that viruses use to shield themselves. By reducing the viral titers, the absolute number of viral copies sitting on the mucosa, you are changing the probability game. Infection is often a numbers game. If you keep the viral load below the infectious dose threshold, the immune system can win. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about physics. When you introduce a hypertonic saline solution, that is, water that is saltier than your body's tissues, you trigger osmosis. Water follows salt. So the saline draws fluid out of the edematous, swollen tissues of the throat. This reduces inflammation, sure, but it also creates a hostile environment for pathogens. It dehydrates the bacteria and viruses. It's a concept known as osmotic dehydration. You are essentially turning the battlefield into a desert where the invader cannot survive. However, the real magic, the biotech moment of this episode, lies in the third mechanism, immunomodulation via the chloride ion theory. This is where the science gets incredibly elegant. Your respiratory tract is lined with epithelial cells. These aren't just passive barriers, they are active immune participants. These cells, along with neutrophils, contain an enzyme called myeloperoxidase. This enzyme has a very specific job. It converts hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, and chloride ions, Cl-, into hypochloric acid, HOCl. If you remember your high school chemistry, HOCl is essentially the active ingredient in bleach, but this is biological bleach. It is a potent oxidant that destroys viral proteins and bacterial cell walls on concall. But here's the catch. Your cells need chloride to make it. By gargling with saline, you are flooding the mucosal tissue with chloride ions. You are refueling the raw materials for the myeloperoxidase enzyme. You are not just washing the throat, you are chemically potentiating the innate immune response, turning your epithelial cells into microscopic factories of antiviral disinfectant. That is a profound shift in perspective. You are not the weapon, you are the supply line for the weapon. Furthermore, we have to look at the rheology, the flow physics of mucus. Your airways are covered in tiny hairs called cilia that beat in rhythm to move mucus out the lungs. This is the mucociliary escalator. For this to work, the mucus needs to be the right consistency. If it's too thick, the escalator stalls and bacteria breed. Hypertonic saline rehydrates the airway surface liquid, improving the sole layer. This increases the ciliary beat frequency. Essentially, you are greasing the gears of your body's trash compaction system, allowing it to clear pathogens much faster. Now, I want to pivot to the data, because as a scientist, I am naturally skeptical. The literature is fascinating but messy. We have landmark trials like the Satom trial in Japan, which looked at thousands of people. They found that regular gargling with water or saline reduced the incidence of upper respiratory infections significantly. But here is an anomaly that we need to parse. Some data suggest that for prevention, plain tap water performs almost as well as saline. However, once you are sick, saline is superior for reducing severity. Why the discrepancy? It implies that the preventative mechanism might be largely mechanical, just keep the viral load down by washing, while the therapeutic mechanism is physiological. Once the virus is inside the cells, you need the osmotic and immunomodulatory effects of the salt to mitigate the damage. We also see data regarding viral shedding. In studies using RT-PCR, the gold standard for viral detection, subjects who gargled hypertonic saline stopped shedding the virus about 2 to 2.5 days earlier than those who didn't. In the context of a pandemic or a flu season, cutting the transmission window by 2 days is massive. That interrupts transmission chains. That saves lives. However, we have to be intellectually honest about the limitations here. Investigating this is a nightmare for trial design. The gold standard of science is the double-blind randomized control trial, but you cannot double-blind a gargle. You know if you are gargling salt water. You know if you are gargling water. You know if you are doing nothing. This introduces the Hawthorne effect. When people know they are part of a study on hygiene, they behave differently. Maybe the gargling group didn't just gargle. Maybe they washed their hands more often because they felt health conscious. Maybe they avoided crowds. It's difficult to isolate the variable. Additionally, most of these studies rely on self-reported symptom diaries. How sore is your throat on a scale of 1 to 7? That's subjective data prone to recall bias. We are also lacking deep biomarker analysis in the older studies. The next generation of research needs to move beyond how do you feel and start measuring secretory IgA levels in saliva. We need to quantify the cytokine storm, interleukin-6, interleukin-8, to see if the gargling is actually dampening the inflammatory fire at a molecular level. So, what are the implications? Why does a high-end biotech podcast care about saltwater? Because we are entering an era of low-tech, high-fidelity health solutions. We have spent the last 50 years looking for pharmaceutical magic bullets, often ignoring the physiological levers we can pull ourselves. Validating this science fundamentally changes clinical stewardship. Imagine a world where the standard of care for the first sign of the scratchy throat isn't wait and see, or beg for antibiotics. Imagine if the clinical guideline was a specific hypertonic saline protocol designed to maximize chloride ion availability. This empowers the patient. It creates active participation in their own health outcomes. It bridges the gap between the feeling of vulnerability and the onset of illness. If we can reduce antibiotic prescriptions for viral URIs by even 10%, because patients feel they have an effective alternative for symptom management, the impact on global antimicrobial resistance would be calculable in billions of dollars and millions of life years saved. We are entering a future where biohacking isn't just about expensive supplements and cold plunges. It's about understanding the electrochemical gradients of your own mucosa. It's about realizing that your body has the machinery to fight off the next pandemic virus, provided you give it the right inputs. So, the next time you feel that ominous tickle in the back of your throat, don't just ignore it. Don't just reach for a lozenge that masks the pain. Remember the myeloperoxidase. Remember the chloride ions. Go to your kitchen, mix a glass of warm salty water, and realize that you aren't just rinsing. You are engaging in a complex evolutionary biological warfare, and you are winning.